Well, hello and welcome to More to the Story with Molly White, where we talk about what the abortion industry does not want you to know. And I'm so glad you joined me again today because we always have great podcasts, and I hope you've been enjoying them. Before I introduce my co host and our special guest, I would like to give a shout out to our show sponsor, Dr. Stephen Hotze with the Hotze Health and Wellness Center. We really appreciate, there you go, Dr. Hotze, and his sponsorship. It really helps us to continue to create these podcasts and get them out on the internet for you. And we also want to thank all the others that send in a monthly contribution. We're very grateful for your support, and we encourage you all to join us and to partner with us, because we do know that these podcasts are changing hearts, saving lives, and leading the lost to Christ. So now I'd like to introduce my awesome, wonderful co-host, Mary Browning.
Thank you, Molly. It's good to be on the show today. And I do want to mention to our listeners that we will have the topic today, as it often is, will be about abortion. There may be some content that causes you to have an emotional reaction. If that occurs, we want you to call the H3 helpline at 866-721-7881, and they can connect you with a healing resource. We consider that emotional reaction to be a trigger and an invitation to healing. So please give them a call or go to operationoutcry.org, and you will find healing resources there and get connected with something close to you. Thank you. Thank you, Molly.
Amen. Thank you, Mary. And Mary, we have another returning guest, because, it seems like 30 minutes is just not long enough when we have our guests on the podcast. And so we asked them to come back and share the rest of the story, I guess, with us, or more to the story. And so we'll introduce him in right now we'll actually introduce him. His name is Sean Corcoran. He is an attorney. He is retired from business, and because God has other plans for him. And he suffered homelessness, addiction, unemployment, criminal behavior, depression, isolation, and failing out of multiple colleges. Because this describes the 8-year period following the loss of his son to abortion. So, Sean, welcome back to the show. We're so happy you joined us, even on vacation.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, I do not normally get to have this color, but I am at the beach. So for the next week, I'll be a little darker than normal. then I'll return to pasty and pale.
Okay. Well, it looks like you're enjoying your time, and we can see the beautiful beachy look in the background. But Mary and I appreciate you taking some time to come back on so we can continue our discussion from last time. And you are the CEO of Men for Life, which is a national pro-life nonprofit organization. You're a national speaker, and you also are an author of the book, The Catalyst: How Men Can Change the Culture and End Abortion, which is set to come out the end of August. And I'm really excited to see that. So, Sean, last time we talked, you did share your abortion testimony. I don't know if you want to give a little recap on that, but you did lose a child that you wanted, and the impact that had on you, and how God now is turning that around and using it for good. So you want to just give us a little brief introduction of that, and let's talk about the rest of the story.
Yes. So, I was 19 years old when I lost my son to abortion, and I fought against it. My family tried to help me fight against it by offering to adopt the child. And we lost. And what that led to, as you described a minute ago, was really destructive to my life. It led to me failing out of college, failing out of another college 2 more times, seeking out drugs, alcohol, women, really anything that could help me to fill the void, even though I didn't associate the abortion with the void until I was in treatment. And, and by the end of that 7-year period, as you said, I was homeless and unemployed, and I was overdosing in a hotel room floor, waiting for the police to arrest me for stealing from my previous employer. And so, what's really important to share about that, I think, though, is that that's not unique to me. I think what's unique about that story is that I'm sharing it, but not that it happened. These behaviors, these destructive behaviors, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's promiscuity or using women or some other destructive behavior. I have a friend who in the period after he lost his child to abortion, it was risk-taking behaviors like cliff diving and racing motorcycles and things like that were just things that help you to forget really about pain. And so it's actually a normal thing. I don't know if I mentioned in the last episode, there's a study out of Denmark using socialized medicine. They studied 192,000 men who had lost a child to either miscarriage, stillbirth, abortion, neonatal death, in this study on lost fatherhood. And this wasn't a voluntary study. They just had the data. These men were involved in the loss of this child. This is what happened afterwards based on their medical records. Of that 192,000 men, 8,221 had lost a child to abortion.
Wow.
Roughly 7,800, I think, in the first 12 weeks, and the remainder after 12 weeks. And what they found was that the men who lost, these 8,221 men who lost a child to abortion, were up to 4.5 times more likely to seek mental health professionals. They were over 70% greater likelihood of needing anti-anxiety medications, prescription sleep aids, and antidepressants. And so I share that because the impact is real. And the impact is real whether it comes from a voluntary study where men are saying, hey, let me tell you what happened after I lost a child to abortion, or whether it's just data, and the data is really telling. And so I'm not alone. And that's why I share my story, because I thought I was alone. And so many men think they're alone. 1 in 5 men will lose a child to abortion by the time they're 45. 20%. So 1 in 5 men in church, 1 in 5 men in the grocery store, 1 in 5 men on the golf course, right?
And you're in your workforce, in your workplace.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And so, but they don't know that because we're told not to talk about it, and because we're not talking about it. And so that's why I talk about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're told that there's no consequences. Abortion is a simple, easy solution,
right.
And you can get your life back together. So we don't always connect those dots. Mary, did you want to say something?
I was just agreeing, but I do want to mention, I don't know, Sean, if you've heard of the phrase moral injury, but there is a comparison between what veterans suffer when they return from war, because they go to war, they do their duty, they kill other people, and they come back and they have a dissonance because it's not inherent in us to kill one another. And so they're comparing abortion. There is a study, there is some work being done right now comparing the harm from abortion to the same kind of harm or PTSD that veterans experience. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah,
because
the injury. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're doing something, like Mary said, that goes against our natural human, biological genetic makeup. We weren't created to kill. That's right. part of the fall. And so thank you, Mary, for bringing that up, because I think it's important for the men who are listening out there to see that. And because you were sharing some of these self-destructive behaviors, which men and women experience after an abortion, Sean, how would you address a man who's listening right now who is doing some self-destructive things or dangerous things or harmful things, but not connecting it to that abortion? How would you encourage him to start looking at that?
It took for me, it took a counselor, right? For me, it took a great fall. for me, it took a great fall, and then having nothing else to do, nowhere else to go except to turn to God, and God brought me to this treatment facility, and the counselor who was there was able to recognize the abortion as the only precipitating factor to the fall, because I wouldn't have done it on my own, I don't think. So I guess to answer your question, if there's a man listening who is engaged in self-destructive behaviors but doesn't know what it is he's trying to cover up, but knows that he has had an abortion, lost a child to abortion, then I would encourage him to think about that, and whether or not that is the cause, and then to know that he's not alone. I think that's the big thing, like that he's not alone. Like I said, 1 in 5 men by the age of 45. Not only is he not alone, but there's men everywhere who are feeling what he's felt. And every single time I've ever talked, men have come up and said, "Hey, I've never told anyone this." And but 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I lost a child to abortion, and that's the reason that I talk, because if I don't, then they're going to keep standing there thinking they're the only one,
Right.
and not being aware that there's something that they can do about it. And it's not just men who fought against the abortion like I did. It's men who pushed for the abortion. It's men who forced the abortion. It's men who just drove to the abortion clinic for a friend. It all comes with guilt and shame and regret and loss. And so if you're wondering, if you're listening to this and you've had an abortion or you lost a child to abortion, and you're wondering, hey, could this be connected? Yes, it could be connected. And obviously every story is different, and we don't know what else might be connected, but I wouldn't discount this.
Amen. And so they could contact menforlife.org. Are there resources for this man who might want to reach out today or sometime after this podcast? Is there ways that he can connect with you or others at menforlife.org?
Absolutely. If they were to just go onto the website and fill out the contact form, it can be anonymous, and say, hey, I'm looking for resources to talk to someone about this. I'm happy to talk to anyone and to put them in contact with the right people. I've been blessed in the last 11 months that I've been in this position to meet so many people who are working in abortion healing, who are working with men in different places all over the country, that I'm confident that I could connect them with someone who could help them. And they're all doing it differently, right? And so I feel like I've met enough people that I could listen to the story if they wanted to share it with me, and connect them to the person who I thought best suited their situation. Or if they didn't want to share it with me, I could just ask them where they're located, and give them some options. And if they really wanted to share it with me, then they could not only heal themselves, but help others to heal by sharing their story on our podcast. Where I think that was the original goal of the podcast, was to share stories of men who have been impacted by abortion. It's expanded greatly since then, but the more we share, the less men will feel alone, and the more we can make an impact.
Thank you. And I know, Mary, I just want to ask real quick if you have something, but so tell men about what it's like before recovery and after recovery, before healing and after healing, after you, for you in particular, what was life like before and after? Because we mentioned this in an earlier show, how it's transformational to go through abortion recovery. What would you say?
Right. Well, and I think I may have mentioned this on the last episode, but I do want to be transparent in that I have not attended a specific abortion healing retreat.
You're waiting to do so.
I'm actually looking at one in November right now. But the way that I have been able to find healing, with my schedule, with my kids, is by doing what I'm doing, is by sharing with you over and over and over and over. And to be honest, every time it kind of unlocks different memories. For instance, I had forgotten until recently that when I had problems in school in the first college, the mother of my child told me that, and keep in mind, she wanted to have the abortion, but she struggled in school after that too. And she was able to go to the counselors and get classes waived. And so I went to the counselors and explained to them the situation, and they were like, "No, like
Oh,
this
wow.
this can't this isn't something that we can help you with. It shouldn't impact you because you're not the one that had an abortion." And and to be honest, I don't know exactly what they said. I don't remember exactly what they said, but the end result was, no, we can't help you, even though they were able to help the mom for the same reason.
Wow.
So
That looks like an area we need to tap into, huh? To
yeah,
make changes in. Um, but it is every time you share your story, I believe I heard you say, and I know I've experienced this, and Mary has too. The more you share a story, the more freeing, the more healing that we experience. Plus, the more people we reach,
right.
and the more we're able to help others. Like you just mentioned, countless men have come to you and confided to you about their abortion, and that just has the effect it has on people. And we're really into recovery, and so I know that one of the projects that you were working on is fatherhood curriculum, right?
Yes.
And so the purpose of that, I'm sure, stems from your personal loss. Plus, you've married and then had two of your children, and then God opened the door for you to adopt several children. We want to talk about that. But let's talk about maybe lost fatherhood and the impact it has and the need for this curriculum.
So the need for the curriculum. Okay, so we were actually focused on the idea of our next project being post-abortive healing for men. Creating that something that could be facilitated by us, but that also could be distributed for other healing ministries. To be where they would just plug and play, right? But then when I was at a conference and I had 104 different pregnancy centers come up to me and say, "Do you have a fatherhood curriculum?" And I took that as a sign from God to say, "Yes, we're going to build a fatherhood curriculum." And so what that means is, the pregnancy centers. There's huge momentum right now in the pro-life movement, and it's not just the pregnancy centers, but it's the messaging that's happening. I don't know if I shared last time that the Vitae Foundation, which is a research organization, is doing their current study is on men and abortion, and I'm grateful to be on the advisory committee for that with some men who are way out of my league. It's like they got all these, like Seth Dillon from the Babylon Bee and Benjamin Watson, the ex NFL player, and all these Alan Keyes. Is that the retired Lieutenant Colonel Alan Keyes? And then at the very bottom of the list is Sean Corcoran. So, but the important thing about that is that it's happening, right? That they see the need for this, and the president of the Vitae Foundation at the last conference I was at gave this powerful statement about how the next step to ending abortion is for men to reclaim their masculinity and get off the sidelines, right? So that's the goal of our fatherhood curriculum. It's going to be different than the fatherhood curriculums that already exist. The fatherhood curriculums that already exist, I give great respect to the people who created them because they did something that needed to be done. If you look at the names of the people who created them, it's all women. And that doesn't make them bad. It just makes them different from what we're going to do, which will be created by men. And so the goal here is the pregnancy centers are bringing in dad when mom comes in. They're saying, "Hey, bring the dad." And she doesn't want to come alone, so she's bringing dad. So what do we do with it, right? And so our goal is to create a program where the pregnancy centers are able to, through a male facilitator, which we will help with virtually if we have to until they find somebody, but to connect with that young man and to start out, instead of starting out by just talking about pregnancy, by talking about fatherhood, by talking about things that he's like, she told me to come here, and so I'm here. Get him excited to be a man. Like share with him what it means to be a man, a real man, in the face of the stuff you get from Andrew Tate, in the face of the selfish, self-aggrandizing, toxic masculinity, which that kind of masculinity is toxic. That's where that term comes from. But it's also not real masculinity. To get them excited about service, to get them excited about a mission, about living for something greater than themselves. The little clip that I use when I talk about this is from the movie Gladiator. And I've shared this with people who are not old enough to have seen the movie Gladiator, and they still get it. So, it's the scene where the main character is in the arena, and the emperor says, "Tell me your name. Take off your helmet and tell me your name." He says, "I am Maximus Decimus Meridius, leader of the I don't remember that part, the legions." But he says, "Father of a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next." And what we get from that is, here is a man who in 30 seconds said clearly enough for everyone who's listening to understand, this is who I am, this is who I'm fighting for, this is why I'm fighting, and this is what I'm going to do next. This is my identity. And so to get these young men excited about having an identity that is not just self, right?
Yeah.
So that we can get them to come back. Because that was the next thing the pregnancy centers asked me. How do you get them to come back? Like, we can get him in there because we tell mom to bring him. So he's not really a willing participant. He's just like following along. How do we get him to come back? Well, we get him to come back by getting him excited about being in that room, so that he wants to be back in that room because he's going to learn something greater. And then using our program to continue to get him excited about being a man before we get him excited about being a father, right? Because if we can build great men, we can build great fathers. We can build men who are good, who are good to women, who respect God, who respect others, and who respect themselves. And sorry, I forgot my microphone was right there. And so that's the goal of our program. I think it's not till week 5 that we start talking about pregnancy.
Awesome.
And I'm sure I'll get pushback on that, but I think it's the right way to go.
You have to lay the foundation, right? And that's
right.
what it sounds like you're doing. Mary, I know you probably have a question that you want to jump in here with.
Oh, I have a line from Gladiator that I think fits. And so it's what we do in this life reverberates into eternity. And
Yes.
so I love that movie. I love what you're doing. So you mentioned the sort of the front and the back end as before we came on air. So what you're really doing is you are right now writing the fatherhood curriculum. Is that right?
Right now, I'm writing the book.
You're writing the
Almost
book.
done with the book. Yes.
And let's see. The title of your book is.
It's called The Catalyst: How Men Can Change the Culture and End Abortion. And look, it's based on the same things, right? It's based on, I'm focusing it towards 3 main audiences.
Okay.
The first is the young man. Same things I just said. Like, get him excited about, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be pro-woman? Like, what does it really mean to be pro-woman? Not you're pro-woman,
Yes.
support my right to choose. But what does it really mean to be pro-woman, where you're supporting women because they're strong, because they're capable, because they're able, not telling them you're not capable, you're not strong enough, you're not able, therefore you can't have a baby. No, like, that's how God created you. And God created women perfectly. And so it's really important that we not disregard that and try to put women down to where they are not capable of doing this. Like, we need to lift them up, but we also need to support them. It's our job to protect. It's our job to provide. It's our job to lead and to serve. And so it's important that we get these men excited about that. But they need somebody to lead them, right? we need to call the men in our generation, which I would say is anyone from 25 older, is how I use the word our generation, to lead these young men, to mentor them, to help bring them, to give them that example
Yes.
that Andrew Tate is not.
Yes.
To show them what true biblical masculinity is.
Yes.
And so, there's so many men in our generation who are like, well, I'm pro-life. What can I do? Well, this is a great place you can be. Like, there's 3,000 pregnancy centers in this country. If every single one of them gets a fatherhood curriculum, then there's 3,000 pregnancy centers that need men leading that to set that example. We need time, talent, treasure. None of us can discount the importance of writing the checks, because that's how all of us survive. However, not everybody can write a check, and not everybody just wants to write a check. And so if you can get in there with the pregnancy centers, and you can help to lead these young men, and even if somebody just wants to put a camera on themselves and show what real masculinity is, and put that on social media so they have something else to look at, I think that's great too. I'm talking a lot here. I did see Terrence's message.
Well, it is important, and even coming from a woman's perspective, just having a man present in a pregnancy resource center would be very comforting for me. But there is a curriculum out there I want to introduce you to. It's called the International Council. Well, the website's the International Council of Biblical Gender Study, and I've taken the studies for womanhood, and it changed my life because I got my identity as how God created a woman to be. And so I'd encourage you to kind of check them out, because they have a curriculum for men as well. And it goes through a very 9 months was the woman study. But it really it helps get your identity of who God created men to be, who God created women to be, who and what and how. And it's life changing. And but you brought about something earlier, and it is, the society since what, Mary, maybe the 1960s, when they had the feminist movement, and how it was really based in Marxism. The leader of the feminist movement was a Marxist, and it was all about destroying patriarchy, masculinity, the natural family, and really just turning women into harlots, actually. But if there was a rise in the feminist movement, now we need to have a rise in the masculine movement,
Yes.
because even the hardcore feminists, they want a man that's strong. They want a man that will lead them, protect them, help them be the best they can be. God made two, man and woman, and we're both opposite, but He put them together, and we become whole. And we need to not only know that, but know how to build on each other's strengths and to work with that within relationships. So that's really exciting. And I know we wanted to talk a little bit before we have to go. I think Terrence says we had 5 minutes. I don't know if that was 5 minutes ago or what. But we don't want to miss out on the fatherhood. And like I mentioned earlier, you finished, of course, you're an attorney. You had a successful law practice. You gave that up for your family, and what God's calling you to do. But you and your wife have 2 natural born children, and you have 3 beautiful adopted children. And we want you to talk a little bit about your adopted children, and especially about Henry's mom and your the mother of your aborted child. I think if we can get that in just a few minutes,
Okay.
that would be great.
Yeah, it's a really cool story. So Michelle was pregnant or breastfeeding for 2 years, and that was really hard on her. And she said, I can't do it anymore. And I wasn't pressuring her to do it. So of course I was like, okay, don't do it. But we were open to adoption. And so we talked to a couple people, we made an appointment with a social worker. And before we got to even have that appointment, we got a call from a friend who said, hey, an OB just called me. A baby was just born. Mom had no prenatal care. She's on drugs. Do you want this baby? And we said, yes, we want this baby. And we weren't prepared at all. We went home, we had to get a babysitter. We were driving from Houston. We went home, we got a babysitter. We had to go to the Target and buy everything. We had to build a bunk bed for our other kids, no preparation at all. But what's awesome about this is the contrast between my first child and Henry is that this lady, his mother, who had no prenatal care, wasn't sure who dad was, wasn't prepared to have a baby, and knew she wasn't prepared to have a baby, carried this child to term, went to the hospital, gave birth, and said, find him a good home. And when you contrast what I would characterize as the most selfless action any person could possibly take in giving Henry life to the abortion, which is the most selfish act someone could take. And it doesn't matter to me what the external forces are. I understand that there's nuances and all that stuff. In the end of the day, we're choosing self over child. It is a selfish act. And I just think that it's really a full circle story, right? That this happened 19 years ago. And I'm sorry, I was 19. This happened, I don't know, 28 years ago now. And then 7 years ago, Henry's mom gave birth to him, and just gave him life. And I don't know her, like, personally. I don't know if she's pro-life. I don't know if she's pro-choice. All I know is that she chose selflessness and gave him life.
Amen. And now he's in a loving, beautiful home. And I know there's many, many other families out there who are waiting to adopt children.
2 million.
2 million. And, so there's no excuse really to have. It's not easier to have an abortion than it is to place a baby for adoption. I've never placed a baby for adoption, but I've lost children to abortion. And that's a trauma that I wish I had never experienced. I wish I'd have gone the adoption way, because I would have had an opportunity to meet my child if I wanted to later in life, and it would have been the selfish way to do that. So we thank you, Sean, for your welcoming home and your beautiful story and your family. And we thank you for coming back on. I'm sorry we're out of time. Mary, I don't know if you have something you want to say before we close.
I do want to plug the book one more time. The Catalyst: How Men Can Change the Culture and End Abortion will be available at the end of August, right?
That's correct.
And then from that, you plan to build the fatherhood curriculum,
Which will be ready to distribute to the pregnancy centers January 1st.
Ooh, yeah, good. Awesome.
Very good.
And if you want to, follow Sean or get his book, he can be contacted at menforlife.org. Thank you, Sean, for coming on again. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your vacation. And we look forward to seeing how God's going to use you and your book and your curriculum. And we want to thank you, Mary, and thank you all for listening in to More to the Story with Molly White. And we look forward to seeing you again next time. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, friend. Our broadcasting wanted to take a moment to personally thank you for being a listener of the More to the Story podcast. Whether you're a longtime subscriber or just found us, we're so glad you're here. This podcast is a community built on sharing, and that's where you come in. If an episode has ever resonated with you, please consider sharing it. Text it to a friend, post it on social media. Your recommendation is the most powerful way to help these important stories reach new ears. We are also inviting businesses and individuals to partner with us as official sponsors. Sponsoring the podcast is a wonderful way to reach a dedicated, thoughtful audience while directly supporting our mission. If you'd like to explore sponsoring the podcast, we invite you to visit our website at www.moretothestorypodcast.org. Again, that's www.moretothestorypodcast.org. Thank you for being a part of our story.